in the ruins of an ancient cathedral. A single candle has burned for centuries, never melting, never dying. When Father Elias arrives to prove it's nothing more than superstition, he finds a flame that breathes and whispers with the voices of the dead. Each attempt to extinguish it awakens something darker, an echo of forbidden faith, bound by a ritual that defied death itself. Now, trapped between belief and damnation, Elias must uncover the truth behind the eternal fire before it consumes his soul. The ancient cathedral loomed ahead, its silhouette a jagged scar against the bruised sky. Father Elias paused at the threshold, the heavy wooden doors groaning faintly as he pushed them open. A gust of cold, stale air swept past him, carrying the faint scent of mold and forgotten prayers. His boots echoed hollowly on the cracked stone floor, each step stirring motes of dust that danced in the pale light filtering through shattered stained glass. He adjusted the collar of his worn clerical robe, eyes narrowing beneath furrowed brows. The rumors had seemed absurd. An eternal candle, burning for centuries without falter, nestled in the heart of this abandoned sanctuary. A relic of faith or superstition. Elias had come to find out, driven by a blend of skepticism and an unspoken need to confront the darkness that had shadowed his own life. The nave stretched before him, a cavernous shell of once sacred beauty, now surrendered to decay. Stone pillars, mottled with moss and cracks, rose like silent sentinels, their capitals carved with twisted faces half swallowed by time. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the distant drip of water seeping through the roof, and the faint whisper of wind sneaking through broken mullions. At the far end where the altar once commanded reverence, a faint glow flickered. Elias's gaze sharpened. Moving cautiously, he approached the source, a solitary candle perched upon a wrought iron stand, its flame dancing in shades of blue and red that seemed unnatural against the dull gray stone around it. He knelt, the cold seeping through his robes as he studied the flame. It pulsed softly, alive in a way that defied reason. Elias's breath caught not from fear, but from the stubborn flicker of a light that refused to be snuffed. His hand reached out instinctively, fingers curling as if to smother the flame, but he hesitated. The air thickened, as if the cathedral itself had drawn a breath. A sudden noise, a shifting, like the rustle of fabric or a whisper too faint to catch, stirred the shadows behind him. Elias turned swiftly, sharp eyes scanning the darkness. Nothing moved, yet a weight settled on his chest, pressing down with the chill of unseen watchers. He shook his head, a bitter smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Superstition, he muttered, rising to his feet. A trick of the light. But as he prepared to extinguish the candle, a flicker of doubt crept in. What if this was more than mere superstition? What if the flame was a beacon not of hope, but of something far darker? The candle burned on, its eerie light casting long, trembling shadows. And somewhere, in the cathedral's ruined depths, unseen eyes followed Elias's every move. The first step had been taken, but the path ahead was shrouded in shadows yet to be revealed. Father Elias took a deep breath and reached for the candle's base, determined to prove the eternal flame was nothing more than a relic of superstition. Yet, as his fingers brushed the wax, a chill ran through him, an unspoken warning whispered by the cathedral itself. Outside, the sky darkened further, and the wind moaned like a mournful hymn through the broken arches. The candle flickered, but it did not falter. The eternal fire was waiting. Father Elias stepped cautiously into the cathedral's decay, his boots echoing against the fractured stone floor. The air was thick with dust and a faint scent of melted wax, but beyond that, a subtle chill clung to the shadows. Ahead, upon the altar, the solitary candle burned with an eerie light, a flame unlike any Elias had ever seen. It flickered with an unnatural mix of blue and red hues, casting twisted shadows that danced malevolently along the cracked walls. He approached the candle with measured steps, the weight of his mission pressing down on him. To extinguish this eternal flame was his task, a task he accepted with a skeptical mind, but a heavy heart. The stories of cursed fire and restless souls were, to him, the ramblings of superstition. Yet the sight before him unsettled his reason. Taking a deep breath, Elias reached for the small pewter snuffer he had carried since his arrival. His hand trembled ever so slightly, betraying the calm mask he wore. The flame danced as if sensing his intent, flickering defiantly. Elias bent low, his sharp eyes fixed on the flame's core. With a swift motion, he covered the candle's mouth with the snuffer, cutting off its oxygen. The flame sputtered, its blue-red glow faltering, then vanished. For a moment, an eerie silence filled the cathedral, broken only by the distant drip of water from the fractured ceiling. Elias exhaled slowly, a faint smile of triumph touching his lips. But the silence was deceptive. Within seconds, a faint glow re-emerged where the flame once had been. The candle relit itself, the unnatural colors pulsing with renewed vigor. Elias recoiled, his heart pounding as he stared in disbelief. The flame's light seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, throbbing in the oppressive gloom. "Impossible," Elias muttered, stepping back. "It cannot be." Jonathan Crane, who had been standing quietly near the nave's entrance, raised an eyebrow. "Looks like that candle has other plans." He flicked on his camera, the lens capturing the eerie light, the blue and red dancing like spectral tongues. Before Elias could respond, a sharp, agonized cry shattered the stillness from outside the cathedral's heavy wooden doors. Both men rushed out into the cold night air, their breaths misting in the chill. A small crowd had gathered around a man lying motionless on the damp earth, his face pale and eyes wide with death. "He's gone," a villager whispered, voice trembling. Elias knelt beside the body, his mind racing. The candle, the flame, was this death connected? He glanced back toward the cathedral, where through the stained glass windows the candle's light flared brightly. As if feeding on the tragedy, a cold dread seeped into Elias's bones. He felt the weight of unseen eyes watching him from the darkness, and the cathedral around him seemed to pulse with a sinister life. For the first time, the boundaries between faith and fear blurred. Back inside, Elias stared intently at the candle. Its flame was no longer just a flicker of wax and wick, it was a beacon of something cursed, something that fed on death and despair. His mind churned with questions he dared not yet voice. "This isn't mere superstition," he whispered. "There's a darkness here, tied to this flame." Jonathan nodded, lowering his camera. "And it's not going anywhere." The chill in the air deepened, and faint whispers seemed to rise from the stone walls, voices lost to time, begging, warning, cursing. Elias clenched his fists, resolve hardening. This was no simple investigation anymore. He was locked in a battle against a force older and darker than he had imagined. As the night stretched onward, the candle's flame flickered in the growing shadows, immortal and unyielding. And Father Elias knew that extinguishing it would demand more than he had ever prepared for. But he would try. One way or another, he would snuff out the eternal fire or be consumed by it. Father Elias stepped cautiously through the cathedral's nave, the once majestic sanctuary now a husk of shattered stained glass and crumbling stone. His boots echoed softly against the cold, cracked marble floor as he moved toward the altar, where the eternal candle flickered with an unnatural steadiness. The air was thick with dust and the scent of decay, yet beneath it lingered something older, something mournful and charged with silent power. He knelt before the altar, his fingers tracing the worn Latin inscriptions etched into the stone. The words had faded with time, but hints of their meanings stirred in his mind, prayers, invocations, warnings. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows that danced like restless spirits across the ancient walls. A shiver ran down his spine, though he refused to yield to superstition. As he straightened, a soft shuffle echoed from a side chamber. Elias turned to see an elderly woman emerge from the shadows, her habit tattered, but her movements deliberate and steady. Her eyes, soft yet piercing, held a depth of knowledge and sorrow that unsettled him unexpectedly. "Sister Miriam," Elias greeted cautiously, recalling the caretaker's name from local whispers. "I did not expect to find anyone here." She smiled faintly, the lines on her face deepening with a mix of warmth and melancholy. "If you come here willingly, Father Elias." But the cathedral does not surrender its secrets easily. He gestured toward the altar. "This candle, it burns still. I intend to understand it, to end this myth." Sister Miriam's gaze drifted toward the flickering flame. "Myth, yes, but also curse. The flame feeds on more than wax and wick. It hungers for souls, bound by ancient rites that twisted faith into something dark." Elias frowned, skepticism warring with the chill creeping through his bones. "What kind of rites?" She beckoned him to follow into a cramped chamber behind the altar, where relics lay scattered beneath layers of dust. On a rickety wooden table rested a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked and pages yellowed with age. "This belonged to Father Gregory," she said softly, her fingers brushing the fragile book, "a man whose faith became his undoing." Elias opened the journal carefully. The handwriting was spidery and uneven, penned in a hurried desperation. The entries spoke of resurrection rites, prayers, and ceremonies meant to defy death itself. Father Gregory's voice echoed through the pages, filled with hope, fear, and ultimately despair as his experiments with forbidden resurrection failed and birthed the eternal flame. The candle's glow seemed to pulse as Elias read, as if responding to the dread that seeped from the cursed past. Each word brought the cathedral's haunted legacy into sharper focus, unraveling the thin veil between faith and damnation. Sister Miriam's voice broke through his thoughts. "The flame is not merely fire, it is a prison for restless souls, a beacon of corrupted faith. It will not die until the curse is broken, but breaking it demands a price." Elias closed the journal, his mind racing. The candle was no longer a superstition to extinguish. It was a living testament to pain and loss, bound to the cathedral's very bones. The shadows around them seemed to thicken, the silence heavy with unseen eyes watching, waiting. "I must understand," Elias said quietly, "even if it means confronting the darkness within myself." Sister Miriam nodded, her eyes reflecting both hope and warning. "Then we walk a perilous path together, Father. The past whispers its secrets, but not all answers bring peace." As the candle flickered between blue and red hues, Elias felt the first true crack in his skepticism. The cathedral was alive with memories and curses, and the eternal flame's story was far from over. The journey into the heart of darkness had only just begun. Outside, the wind howled through the broken arches, carrying with it the faintest echo of prayers long forgotten and the restless whispers of the past. And somewhere deep within the cathedral's shadows, the candle burned on, refusing to die. The vastness of the cathedral seemed to swallow every sound but the faint, unnatural flicker of the solitary candle. Father Elias stood motionless, the cold stone floor pressing against his worn boots. As the trembling flame cast grotesque shadows that writhed like living things against the cracked walls. An uneasy chill crept up his spine, defying his reasoned mind and the skeptical armor he had forged over years of study and loss. He had come expecting decay and silence, a simple investigation to disprove superstition. Yet in this desolate sanctuary, something stirred, something that defied explanation. The candle's flame danced erratically, its eerie hues of blue and red blending in a spectral dance that seemed almost sentient. Elias's sharp eyes narrowed, trying to pierce the gloom, but the shadows twisted with a life of their own, lengthening and contorting into shapes that whispered of torment. Sudden whisper brushed past his ear, soft and fragmented like the rustling of dead leaves. Eyes spun, heart pounding, but saw only empty air. The cathedral's vast arches echoed with the faintest murmurs, voices broken and pleading, impossible to grasp yet impossibly real. "Help us." The voices seemed to sigh, a chorus of despair that clawed at his mind. He gripped the edge of a pew for support, struggling to steady his breath. "It's just the wind," he muttered, though no breeze stirred the stagnant air. Yet the whispers persisted, growing in urgency, a spectral litany that gnawed at the edges of his skepticism. The candle flickered violently, and for a heartbeat, Elias saw it, the flame shifting, its shape elongating until it resembled a ghostly visage. The face was pale and gaunt, eyes burning with a furious, unnatural fire. It was Father Gregory the priest, whose name had echoed through the whispered lore of this place. The man whose failed resurrection ritual had birthed this cursed flame. Elias staggered back, breath catching in his throat. The apparition's eyes locked with his, accusing and filled with agony. A silent scream seemed to radiate from the flame itself, a soundless cry that echoed in the hollow chambers of Elias's soul. The candle's glow pulsed, bathing the cryptic inscriptions around him in a sinister light. He closed his eyes, willing the vision to vanish, but the torment lingered. When he opened them again, the shadows had thickened, and the whispers had grown into a chorus of lamentation. The cathedral was alive with the restless dead, their presence woven into the very stone and flame. His hands trembled as he pulled his journal from his coat, the leather cover worn and familiar. Scribbling furiously, Elias tried to capture the impossible, the creeping dread that gnawed at his faith. Doubt twisted within him, a serpent coiling tighter with each passing moment. The eternal flame was no mere superstition, it was a beacon of cursed faith, a terrible echo of resurrection gone wrong. Outside, the sky darkened further, a storm gathering on the horizon. Within the cathedral's shattered sanctity, Elias felt the weight of unseen eyes upon him. The shadows stirred, the whispers grew louder, and the candle flickered once more, refusing to die, refusing to be ignored. He whispered a prayer, not for protection, but for understanding. For now, all he knew was that the darkness was no longer a mere absence of light, but a living entity, intertwined with the eternal fire and the souls it bound. And Father Elias, once a skeptic, was caught in its relentless grasp. As the night deepened, the cathedral seemed to breathe with a sinister life of its own. Elias's resolve hardened, tempered by fear and fascination alike. The shadows stirred, and the eternal flame waited its cursed dance far from over. He was no longer alone. The haunting had begun. The skeletal silhouette of the cathedral loomed against the steel grey sky as Jonathan Crane approached. His boots crunching softly on the scattered debris that littered the ancient stone steps. He paused briefly at the threshold, adjusting the strap of his camera bag, a familiar weight grounding him amid the eerie aura that seemed to cling to the ruins like a second skin. The once majestic cathedral had fallen into a state of solemn decay, its stained glass windows shattered, the lofty arches scarred by centuries of neglect. Yet, amid this desolation, a solitary flame burned steadily on the altar, casting elongated shadows that danced with unsettling life. Jonathan's arrival was timed to coincide with Father Elias's investigation, a convergence born of mutual necessity and contrasting worldviews. As a journalist with a penchant for the paranormal, Jonathan was drawn not only by the candle's mysterious endurance, but by the chance to document a story that defied easy explanation. His camera equipment, an assortment of high-sensitivity lenses, infrared sensors, and audio recorders was his arsenal against the unknown. Tools designed to capture what the human eye often missed. Inside, Father Elias awaited, his figure a study in contrast to the cathedral's ruin. Clad in his worn clerical robes, the priest's gaunt face was etched with lines of skepticism and determination. His sharp eyes flicked up as Jonathan entered, a faint crease of surprise breaking his usual composure. Jonathan Crane, the journalist, introduced himself, extending a hand. "I've been following your work and the reports about this cathedral. Thought I'd see the eternal candle for myself." Elias nodded, the handshake firm but cautious. "The candle is more than a curiosity, it's a curse." Their conversation began with polite reserve but quickly slid into a more probing exchange. Jonathan's questions were pointed, his tone laced with a mix of professional skepticism and genuine intrigue. "You believe it's supernatural?" Elias's gaze hardened. "I've seen enough to doubt it's mere superstition, but belief, that is harder to claim." As Jonathan unpacked his gear, the cathedral's cold air seemed to thicken with anticipation. He positioned a camera near the altar, its lens trained on the flickering candle. The flame danced with an unnatural hue, flickering between eerie blues and subdued reds, shadows coiling within it as if alive. "I want to capture every detail," Jonathan explained, setting up an infrared sensor beside the camera. "If there's something here, the evidence will reveal it." Elias observed silently, the flicker of the candlelight reflecting in his sharp eyes. Their uneasy alliance hung suspended in the chill air, a fragile meeting of faith and inquiry. As night deepened, the cathedral seemed to breathe around them. The flickering flame cast wavering patterns across the cracked stone floor, its ethereal glow drawing Elias's gaze despite his efforts to remain detached. Jonathan adjusted his camera settings, the soft click of buttons punctuating the heavy silence. Suddenly, a gust swept through the nave, snuffing out Jonathan's flashlight. Darkness enveloped them, punctuated only by the stubborn glow of the eternal candle. Breath caught in their throats, they waited as the flashlight flickered weakly back to life. Jonathan's camera lens caught a flicker that neither had seen with the naked eye, a ghostly visage shimmering within the flame's core, a pale face twisted in silent torment. His hand trembled slightly as he lowered the camera to Elias, eyes wide. "Did you see that?" Elias nodded slowly, a chill running down his spine. "It's more than a flame, it's a prison." The night stretched on, their dialogue a blend of scientific observation and spiritual unease. Jonathan's recordings captured whispers beneath the candle's crackle, faint murmurs that seemed to echo from the cathedral's very stones. Elias felt the walls close in, the air thick with unseen eyes. In the quiet moments, the two men found themselves bound by the mystery they sought to unravel, their conflicting beliefs weaving a complex tapestry of doubt and hope. The eternal candle flickered on, its light a beacon in the darkness, defying extinction and reason alike. As dawn threatened the horizon, Jonathan packed away his equipment, his expression thoughtful yet unsettled. "This isn't just a story," he murmured. "It's something." Alive, Elias met his gaze, the weight of his own uncertainties pressing heavy upon him. "And we are its witnesses." Outside, the first pale light crept across the cathedral's battered facade. Inside, the candle's flame burned steady, a silent sentinel to the secrets yet to be revealed. The alliance forged between skeptic and believer was uneasy, but necessary, for in the heart of the cathedral, the eternal fire awaited, patient and unyielding, its cursed glow refusing to die. And so their journey together began, each step forward shadowed by the flickering flame and the dark history it guarded. Father Elias followed Lena and Jonathan through the twisting lanes of the nearby village, the sky darkening with the slow crawl of evening. The air was thick with mist, and the faint scent of damp earth and decaying leaves clung to every breath. Lena walked ahead, her steps cautious and measured, eyes darting to every shadow as if expecting something unseen to emerge from the gloom. "The cathedral has long been a place of sorrow," Lena said in a voice barely above a whisper, her gaze fixed on the cracked cobblestones beneath their feet. "My grandmother told me stories, whispers from the past. They say the candle burns on because the souls trapped inside cannot find rest." Elias listened, his skepticism warring with the unease settling inside him. He had come seeking reason, explanations grounded in fact and theology, yet the village's palpable fear was impossible to ignore. Jonathan, ever the skeptic but intrigued, recorded Lena's words with his small voice recorder, its faint red light blinking steadily. As they reached the edge of the village, a heavy silence fell. Lena stopped beneath a weathered stone cross, its surface worn by centuries of rain. "Many have died here," she said, voice trembling. "Some said the flame feeds on their souls." Elias looked up at the looming silhouette of the cathedral beyond the trees, its broken spires piercing the darkening sky. The eternal candle burned somewhere within, its flame a cruel beacon in the gathering night. Back inside the cathedral's vast nave, Elias and Jonathan approached the solitary candle set upon an ancient altar. The flame flickered with unnatural hues, blue and red intertwining as if alive with some malevolent will. The light cast eerie shadows that stretched and writhed along the cracked stone walls, whispering secrets of centuries past. Suddenly, a scream shattered the silence, sharp and desperate. Elias's heart pounded as he turned toward the sound, Jonathan close behind. They rushed outside to find a man doubled over near the village outskirts, clutching his chest with a grimace of agony. His breath came in ragged gasps, and his eyes rolled back as he collapsed onto the cold earth. "Help!" Jonathan shouted, crouching beside the man, but the life was slipping away too quickly. Elias knelt, murmuring a prayer, but the man's grip loosened, his body slack with death. In that instant, a sudden flare erupted from the candle inside the cathedral. Elias felt the heat even from afar, the flame growing taller, more vibrant, as if hungry and alive. It pulsed with an intensity that cast dancing silhouettes, faces twisted in torment across the broken glass and shattered pews. The unholy connection between the man's death and the candle's resurgence was undeniable. Elias's mind raced with the implications. This was no ordinary flame. It was bound to the life force of those who perished near it, feeding on their souls to sustain its cursed existence. Jonathan's camera captured the phenomenon, the flickering light revealing spectral forms that seemed to reach out toward the living. "This is beyond anything I've seen," Jonathan whispered, voice tight with awe and fear. Elias's resolve hardened. The candle was more than a relic. It was a vessel of suffering, a twisted symbol of faith corrupted by unnatural resurrection. Every death near the cathedral reignited the flame, perpetuating a cycle of torment that had endured for centuries. That night, Elias sat alone in the cathedral's shadowed nave. The candle's renewed glow bathed the ruins in an unearthly light. Outside, the wind moaned through broken windows, carrying with it the faint tolling of distant church bells, a mournful dirge echoing the lives lost and the souls ensnared within the eternal flame's curse. He opened his journal, fingers trembling as he wrote. "The candle's fire is no mere superstition. It is tethered to death itself, feeding on the passage between worlds. To extinguish it may require a sacrifice I have yet to comprehend." As the candle flickered stubbornly before him, Elias felt the weight of the curse settle deep within his bones. The cathedral was alive with sorrow and darkness, its haunted legacy refusing to be forgotten. And as the eternal flame burned on, so too did the shadow of despair that threatened to engulf them all. The investigation had only just begun, but already Elias knew that the path ahead would demand everything he had and more. He closed his journal and rose, the candle's light casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the cold stone floor. The cathedral's silence pressed in around him, thick with the promise of horrors yet to come. Outside, the night deepened, and the eternal flame pulsed in time with the heartbeat of the cursed cathedral, an unyielding sentinel to the dead and the damned. And somewhere in the darkness a whisper echoed, "The fire never dies." Elias's breath hitched as he stared into the flame, the flickering light reflecting the storm of doubt and dread swirling within him. The candle had claimed another soul, and the curse grew stronger still.